Marketing AI Institute just partnered with Drift to release our third annual State of Marketing AI report. So the 2023 State of Marketing AI report is now out, and it contains never before seen data from 900 plus marketers on how they understand, use, and adopt AI. And we're really pleased with the report because we've got tons of insights now on things like how marketers are actually buying AI technology, the top outcomes that they're looking to get from AI, the top barriers preventing them from adopting AI, how people in the industry feel about AI's impact on jobs and society, who owns AI within companies, and much, much more. So we wanted to devote one of the topics today to actually talking through some of the most interesting findings from our data. Now, we won't go through every single data point. We'd encourage you to go to stateofmarketingai.com to download the report. That link will also be in the show notes. But we did want to cover some of the highlights that jumped out to us, given that this year is the far and away the most people that have ever taken it over the 3 years we've done it. And it's been such a huge 12-month period for artificial intelligence. So, Paul, first up, what findings jumped out at you the most from this research?
It's always one of my favorite pieces of content we put out each year because I'm always so intrigued to see how the responses change. And certainly with ChatGPT, we expected some pretty dramatic shifts in the responses, and we certainly did see that in some cases. So a few that jumped out to me. The first was 64% of marketers say AI is either very important or critically important to their success over the next 12 months. This is a question we have been asking for 3 years now. And this was one where we saw a large change in sentiment. So in 2022, only 51% said that. So a 13-point shift in that response was very notable. So we're definitely seeing more urgency from marketers. The next one was we ask about what are the benefits that they're seeking, and 77% say reducing time spent on repetitive tasks is the top outcome they want to achieve. Pretty, I guess, like what we assumed, but to see that significant number, I think it was larger than by like 20 points of the next closest one.
Yeah.
The 98% of all marketers say they're already personally using AI. Makes sense. Now, again, we always have to be transparent with the bias of our sample, which is these are largely people who are subscribers or followers of Marketing AI Institute. So the way we promote the survey from April to July when it was open is through our newsletter, through pop-ups on our site, through our webinars, podcasts we mentioned it a few times. So the people who were taking this are already predisposed to be interested in AI because they're following the Institute in some way. So 98% may not hold up across the 11 million marketers worldwide, but our experience is it's probably a pretty good representation. When we do our intro to AI class, we've asked previously, like, how many of you have experimented with ChatGPT? And that number 2 months ago was in the 90 percentile. So it's, I think everybody, if you account for ChatGPT being a part of this question, it's pretty reasonable to assume it's in the 90%. I mean, if you haven't experimented with AI in some capacity yet, and you're a marketer, I'm not really sure what you've been doing for the last 9 months. So, but at 98%, but then we asked, like, we trying to kind of categorize that. So I thought it was interesting. 45% was the largest percentage. They said they're experimenting with it. 29% say it's infused into their daily workflows. So I've said this before on this, like, I would put myself into the experimenting category. I have not changed any of my personal workflows because of AI. But I do use it all the time to test and see if it can enhance what I'm doing. So that one I liked. The other couple that jumped out to me was 78% still say they don't have internal AI focused education and training. Like, this has been the number one finding for the last couple of years, is the lack of education and training. And then it's always the number one answer for what are the biggest obstacles to AI adoption is lack of education and training. So this to us is always, like, for 3 years running, the urgency and the critical nature of education and training just continues to get reinforced, even though we saw it improve a little bit this year. More have AI training and education in development. But still the vast majority of organizations have no training. And this one like expands beyond just marketing, because we're asking marketers, does your organization have training, not just the marketing team? And they're saying no, we don't have it. And then the last one that kind of plays along with that, only 22% of organizations have generative AI policies, which we've talked about many times on this show before, about being an important first step people can take. You can do that today, like set parameters for your employees of what they're allowed and not allowed to do. And then only 21% have AI ethics policies or responsible AI principles. That was a new question this year. We haven't previously asked that, so we don't have benchmark data for it. But again, so much work to be done. The nice thing, I think, with that final one around generative AI and responsible AI is we can fix that. Like as an industry, we can start solving for that next week, like start putting those things in place. So I really hope, like when we start looking out to next year, I would love to see way more people say, yes, we have internal AI focused education and training. And I think we will see a big shift in that. And I would love to see 50% plus saying, yeah, we have generative AI policies and responsible AI principles. Like if we do our job over the next 12 months, hopefully we can really help move the needle on those two things in particular, because those are very important to us.
So we're looking at the vast majority of people lacking training and this support essentially in the form of policies to help guide them as they're trying to use AI in their career. And what really jumped out as well from the data is that when we asked who owns AI within the organization, the two overwhelming roles, either on their own or together with joint ownership, were CEOs and CMOs overwhelmingly owning artificial intelligence. Now, I'm curious about your take on the fact that we also found CMOs lag behind other C-suite roles when it comes to AI. So we ask all these questions about AI understanding, confidence evaluating the technology to buy it, and using it yourself, as you mentioned. And among the C-suite, CMOs were most likely to say they had a beginner's understanding of AI. They were least likely to say they had an advanced understanding. They were also least likely to have high or very high degrees of confidence in evaluating AI. And compared to other C-suite roles we surveyed, they were the least likely to be infusing AI into their daily workflows. So what was your takeaway here, seeing how important CMOs are as a piece of this puzzle to get that formal training and adoption and strategy in place, but then at the same time, they're struggling, like many other people, to understand AI?
I mean, CMOs have a lot on their plate. It doesn't really surprise me, because they've got a lot of things to deal with and they don't have a lot of time to be figuring this stuff out. So, I think we've seen it over and over again, just with leaders in general at organizations. Again, we've, talked with universities, we talk with corporations, like larger enterprises, talk with small, mid-sized businesses. People have full-time jobs, like, and AI in some ways feels like something you really need to set aside time to learn. I mean, you and I have the luxury of, this is what we get to do for a living now, is we get to think about this 24 hours a day, basically. And sometimes I think we forget that a lot of other people don't have that luxury, that the time they get to think about AI is like the once a week they get to listen to our podcast, and they're trying to like soak it all in and hear all the key things, but then they got to go back and like solve for today and tomorrow. And a lot of times for their job, that does not mean getting to watch an online course or read an AI book, things like that. So I think I don't know how you solve this really quickly, because CMOs are pulled in so many different directions. It's a hard thing for them to really be able to dedicate energy to. So I think for a lot of CMOs, this is going to take a very intentional effort over the next few months to start carving out an hour, 2 hours a week, whatever it's going to be, where they can really level up their knowledge and their confidence with AI, so that they can more confidently lead moving forward. But I'm just empathetic to the fact that it's not easy. Like, we talk about the need for this and the urgency of it, but then you get to the reality of people's schedules are crazy and they have a lot of competing interests for their time and their resources. And it's just unrealistic to think everyone's just gonna be able to drop everything they're doing and figure this stuff out right away. So hopefully what we're doing helps move this along. And if the podcast is people's like window into this each week, great. But I think that moving forward, it's just going to become, right now, maybe it hasn't surfaced to the top, but I feel like this is going to become a priority for a lot of CMOs whether they're ready for it to be or not moving forward.
So you and I presented the findings on a webinar last week, which people can find by going to the site and going to our resources and then webinars section, and they can watch it on demand. But a really popular part of that presentation was the advice you gave to leaders at the end, these 5 essential steps to begin thinking about taking. And I'd highly encourage anyone listening to go watch the full webinar to get the full impact of these. But could you quickly walk us through what those 5 essential steps are?
Yeah, any regular listeners have heard us say these 5 steps before, but I think they always bear repeating. So the first is education and training, individually and for your team and for your company. A lot of times marketers are going to have to be the ones to lead on this within their organization, to drive the communications around the impact and importance of AI. So education and training, creating an internal AI council. We've talked about that many times. We're seeing more and more organizations. Every week I'm having conversations with people who are telling me, oh, we started the AI council, thanks for the recommendation. And it's really cool just to hear the different ways people are approaching that. There's no one way to do an AI council. Basic premise is get people together who are interested in solving for this in the company. Could be 2 people, could be 20 people, but start there. Responsible AI principles, generative AI policies. We talked about that as a key finding. Only like 21 and 22% of people, organizations have done this to date. So you can really get out ahead of things by doing that. The one that's a little more complicated, we'll try and share more guidance on how to do this step moving forward, but conducting an AI impact or exposure assessment for your people, for your teams, how AI is going to change their job over the next 12 to 24 months, and start being proactive in preparing them and reskilling them and upskilling them. And then building an AI roadmap that prioritizes use cases and overall campaigns and strategies around building a more intelligent company. So those are the 5 things we generally talk about as key for people. And it doesn't matter if you're a small business with 5 employees or an enterprise with 50,000 employees. Those steps are relevant to you.